Hello everybody and welcome to part 3 on my video for question 4 on paper 2 of the AQA GCSE English language exam. So in part 2 we went through a sample paragraph and we looked at the paragraph flowchart for this question. So hopefully you will have watched that video and understood how we can include all of these little sections of that paragraph flowchart into a paragraph for this answer. So obviously loads of my students like my videos because I provide practice questions for you to do really. I know that revision can get quite boring, and not to say that this is going to be hugely interesting for you, but working through practice questions and past exam papers is, I feel, the best way to revise, okay? So we want to do some active revision. So here's a question that you can actively work through. And the best thing you can do is try and do it to time. Now, I would advise you give yourself 10 minutes to read through the sources. Bearing in mind that you need to look at the question before. So when you're given your exam paper, look at the questions first so you know what you're looking for when you read through the sources, and then give yourself 10 minutes. So for this question, it's worth 16 marks. So you've got about 20 minutes to answer the question itself. Obviously, we want to give ourselves some planning time. So if you can plan in about 3 to 4 minutes, then you've got 16 minutes to physically write the question. Now, it's tough. So the more practice you do, the quicker you'll get at doing it. So these sources are focused on nursing. Source A is written by Florence Nightingale. I'm sure that you will all know about Florence Nightingale, very, very famous lady. And source B is written by a journalist. In fact, it doesn't list the name, okay, but it's written by a journalist and it's commenting on the state of the NHS. So that's your modern extract. So you have got to compare how the writers convey their attitudes to nursing. Now, it will say in your answer, you could, okay? Now, I've changed the phrasing in my question and I've said you should, because you need to make sure that you do each of these things. You need to make sure that you compare their attitudes, okay? Thoughts and feelings, perspectives, ideas, however you want to call it. You need to make sure you compare the methods. Methods means read my rules, linguistic devices, okay? It also means simple words, so commenting on verbs, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, all of those different word classes that you should have learned, okay? And you also need to support your ideas, okay? So you need to include quotes. So you need to make sure that you include each of those things within each paragraph of your answer. You can get these sources from my website, asiaexams.wordpress.com. So I would suggest that you head over there now, download these 2 for free, and give yourself 10 minutes to read through, and then have a go at writing an answer to this question. Part 2, I gave you the paragraph flowchart, which you can also download. So use that to structure each one of your paragraphs for the answer. So if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go in real time, great. If not, here's a sample answer. Okay, so I'm hoping that you had a go on your own. Things that you could have noted. So remember that we're looking for thoughts and feelings, perspectives, ideas, attitudes, okay? So across the 2 sources, things that you could have picked out are time pressures, so the reference to how little time nurses have to do things. That nursing is a vocation, that generally people who go into nursing do it because they love it and they want to help people. You could have discussed the horrific conditions that Florence Nightingale described. Obviously, that is in comparison to the pressures that are faced by modern nurses, such as paperwork. So that is a difference between the 2 sources. You could have commented on staffing problems. Obviously, that's not mentioned by Nightingale, but it's, again, another modern day problem. A similarity between the 2 texts was that nursing is extremely tiring. You could have talked about the fact that Nightingale says there's a lack of room, whereas that isn't really indicated in source B. Source B, modern day nurses believe they are underpaid. I could agree with that, to be honest with you. great job that they do. Obviously, Nightingale doesn't comment on that. It's a different situation that she is in, okay? She's working on the front line of a war. So that is something that you could comment on, that actually being underpaid is a modern problem. They are doing it as a profession, whereas Nightingale believes that it is her vocation, that they are doing it because there is a war. So that change in circumstance dictates how they feel about their job. And also you could talk about the level of care provided. Now, I think that Nightingale believes that she does a pretty good job based on the circumstances and conditions she's working in. Now, obviously, source B discusses how many nurses feel that they can't provide an adequate level of care because of staffing and paperwork issues. So all of these things you could have commented on. And I've chosen 3 things from there, and I've written them into my paragraph flowchart paragraphs. So let's have a look at this in more detail. Whoops, sorry. Let me zoom that in for you. Okay, hopefully it hasn't made you too dizzy. Right, so I said to you in my part 2 video that I would advise opening with a general opening comparison. So here both sources explore the theme of nursing and how difficult it is to work in that profession. Okay, so immediately we've commented that both writers believe that nursing is difficult. Okay, then I've said what perspective Florence Nightingale has. So she's writing on the front line of a war, whereas the journalist is just commenting on the state of the NHS. So obviously their perspectives on nursing are going to be very different. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to whiz down to my final paragraph, because you can read this in your own time. And we've already looked through a paragraph in part 2. So my final paragraph, okay, obviously I've structured each one with the flowchart in mind. However, my final paragraph I think is probably the strongest point that I make, okay? I would try either open or close with your strongest point, all right? Don't know why, but I think that, you know, it makes your answer much stronger and firm and hits the mark scheme if you can go in with a really good point and then you can end with a really good point. So make sure you choose points that you're really confident about. I think that's the most important thing, is don't choose quotes that you don't know what the words mean or suggest, because you're not going to be able to do your dissection. I particularly like my 3rd paragraph, so let's have a look at this. So I said, finally, both writers make it clear that nursing is a vocation. So this is the one that I really liked, okay? So the fact that nurses believe they're doing it because they've been chosen to do it, they are the right people to do it. Okay, now Nightingale repeats, so I mentioned the technique, that it is good for her to be in the military hospital, and also references St. Peter. So what I've done is I've chosen just a word, good, okay, and I've also chosen St. Peter, the name, okay. So simple little quotes, don't take ages writing really lengthy quotes. And I've said that that infers that she believes her profession is a calling from God, okay? Obviously the reference to St. Peter. And how that links then to that perspective that nursing is a vocation. Now, obviously I need to do my define bit really. So I've said the use of the adjective good signifies that despite the appalling conditions and horrific injuries, she feels that she's making a positive difference to the lives of the soldiers. So I've really considered what that word good means, okay? Now obviously good means, you know, positive difference, and the fact that despite the conditions that she's mentioned before, she feels that she is making a positive difference. Obviously the St. Peter bit was the profession, was a calling from God rather, okay? So I've really unpicked what those words suggest. Then I've used a comparative discourse marker, so I've said similarly, the writer of source B also uses repetition. So this is a good paragraph in that actually I'm commenting on how the writers have used similar or different techniques as well. Okay, so this writer in source B also uses repetition. And the use of that repetition, in this case I've chosen the word love, emphasises that nurses do love their job. Okay, the use of the noun love, okay, this is my define bit, highlights the intense feeling of affection nurses have for their profession. Okay, so that is my implication, what is implied and suggested, and also my define bit as well. And it promotes a feeling of pride and compassion in the reader. So I've thought about the effect on the reader. So why has the writer included these quotes from those nurses? It's obviously to make you, the reader, feel a certain thing. And then obviously I've got my summary bit at the end of the paragraph, and it says, it is clear that both writers believe that nursing is a job which is hugely worthwhile and rewarding, and therefore the reader should support and respect those people who choose it as a profession. Okay, so I've compared the perspectives. I've said that they both believe the same thing. Okay, and I've also considered why they write these things. What do they want the reader to feel? All right, so I'm hoping that having looked through my paragraphs for this answer, that will have cleared up how you can write a comparative answer for this question. Okay, now I know you've got little time to do this, and that's a huge amount of detail for this question. What I would say is aim for that amount of detail. See how much you can do within that 20 minutes. At the end of the 20 minutes, if you've only written 2 comparative paragraphs, move on to your section B, and then if you've got time at the end of your section B, come back to this question 4 and see if you can add some more on. Okay, make sure that you leave enough time to write your section B answer, okay, because that is worth half the marks on the paper. All right, I'm hoping that's helped. As mentioned before many times, you can get all of these free downloads from my website aceyourexams.wordpress.com, and if you've got any questions, please leave a little comment and I'll get back to you, or you can tweet me. My Twitter address is @aceyourexams. Thanks for listening. Hope to speak to you soon.